I was asked to make the speech in 2005 in about the month of March, and the speech was going to be in June. I said yes right away. It was such an honor. And then, of course, completely panicked, wondering what I, an actor, would say to a Harvard graduating class. Being an actor, I decided to at least end with a flourish. I decided to write a children's book for the occasion. I just thought hard and came up with this curious plot about a brilliant mouse who goes to Harvard. And I imagined that the book would end on commencement day. And sure enough, it was a big success and a big finish. I got a standing ovation, and they asked for an encore. All my children's books, except the very first one, have included some kind of different audio CD. A couple of them have been songs that I've sung, like I'm a Manatee and Marsupial Sue. Some have been simply recitations of the text. One of them was the narration for a ballet suite, Carnival of the Animals. This one, we just decided to include the actual recording of the first time I ever spoke the story aloud, which was at the Harvard commencement. And you can even hear the audience responding. You can hear them laughing at all the particular in-jokes. My first children's book was The Remarkable Farkle McBride, and I wrote it by mistake. I didn't even know I was writing a children's book. I wrote it as the narration of an orchestral suite to teach children about the four sections of the orchestra, along the lines of Peter and the Wolf or Tubby the Tuba. It was the story of a little boy who masters instruments from each one of these four sections of the orchestra in succession, loses patience with each one. He's only happy when he hears them all playing together, and he becomes a young child prodigy conductor. That was to isolate and show off the four sections of the orchestra. Well, I finished the whole thing, and before I'd even talked to a composer about it, it sort of hit me like a lightning bolt. My goodness, I've written a children's book here. And I contacted a good friend of mine, a terrific illustrator, C.F. Payne, and we took the project to Simon & Schuster, and not only did they accept it, they gave me a 2-book deal, so I was a book author whether I wanted to be or not. The books have come into being in all sorts of different ways. Usually I'm asked to do something or something occurs to me. There isn't a single way to do it. I very rarely simply sit down and think, okay, what's my next book going to be? As an example, Christopher Wheeldon, the great ballet choreographer, asked me to write the narration for a ballet he was doing of Saint-Saëns' Carnival of the Animals. And I was delighted to do that. It sounded like such an interesting new thing. Not only was I going to write the narration, but I was going to be the narrator in the ballet. I thought how wonderful to work with the New York City Ballet. And my second thought was, oh, and this will be a book, too. Very often, the idea comes from elsewhere. Mahalia Mouse is a very good example of that. I was asked to do a commencement speech, and a children's book came out of it. A couple of my books are simply songs that I've composed to perform in concerts for children. And that includes my next book, which is called I Got Two Dogs. I mean, that's a song that I've been singing for 15 years, and in every concert it's the kids' favorite song. So my editor, who's no fool, he said, here's a book too. I think it's important that you don't talk either up or down to children, that you really think in terms of what they like and what they can absorb. My own books, most of them tend to have a sort of secret agenda. Farkle McBride was intended to get kids excited about classical music. Maclauber was all about getting them interested in going into museums and looking at art and making art themselves. Carnival of the Animals connects with the ballet. And of course, obviously, Mahalia Mouse is intended to get very small children already interested in the idea of education in general and college in particular, giving them this very, very far away goal to aim for. And it also has the agenda of, girls can like science too. The hidden agenda does not overwhelm just the fun of the story. It's always kind of secretly educational. I never intend to send an obvious message to children. I always loved Stuart Little when I was a kid. Well, for one thing, I think E.B. White is one of the best writers for children that there ever was. He wasn't just a writer for children. He was a wonderful writer from The New Yorker, of course. And he wrote for children in this very kind of unapologetically challenging and sophisticated way. And Stuart Little had this fabulous conceit that Stuart Little lived the life of a human being and made absolutely no attempt to explain this. His parents were humans. His older brother was a human. He had all sorts of adventures which a brave young boy might have, like, for example, sailing toy sailboats in the regatta in Central Park. And yet he was a mouse. As a kid, I remember thinking, what a cool idea, and how daring this writer was to just go ahead and do this. The fact that he had a little toy wind-up car that he drove around the countryside. There's no question about it. Mahalia Mouse is my little homage to E.B. White and to Stuart Little.